This morning, we've been talking about the impact COVID has had on kids' learning. 9 News social equity expert Dr. Rosemarie Allen is now with us. Good morning. You look beautiful as always.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you in. We've been talking a lot about that this morning. So kids are returning to school after more than 2 years of disruptions to all of the learning, all the impacts from COVID-19 and the pandemic. How has it really impacted their learning over the last couple of years?
You know, we have just seen extreme negative impacts. High rates of absenteeism, lost instruction time, mental health concerns. They've just been thrown really into havoc. We have seen so much in terms of what they've lost in terms of academic growth, and we know that this has really negatively impacted children of color and children living in poverty.
That's what I was going to ask you, because, you know, we throw out this blanket statement, and I think there's learning loss across the board with, you know, all of the grades, but certain groups have been impacted more the last couple years.
Absolutely. For instance, remote learning. We know that children who are engaged in remote learning environments, they do not learn as much. However, children of color and those living in poverty, they are 5 times more likely to be in those environments. So when you look at the gap that already existed, when we look, for instance, at reading, the gap has widened by 15% and math gaps by 20%. Wow. So we're seeing children who were already vulnerable have those gaps widened. So they've really lost more.
There's just so many things that happened during the pandemic. I think back and they're like, okay, we're going to be remote learning. It's like, well, what about the kids that don't have access to a computer or Wi-Fi? I mean, that's where you can see how this impacted some groups more than other groups.
Absolutely, and schools did an amazing job trying to make sure that students had laptops, but it was harder to ensure they had connectivity.
Right.
We saw some children sitting outside of Wendy's or Starbucks just to be able to get on the internet. So the resources were limited for many children living in poverty and those who are of color.
How do we close the gap with this new school year?
And you know, we're focusing on academic gaps, but let's shift our focus. Let's look at what children have learned, because children learn in whatever environment they're in. So teachers and families can work together, and teachers can ask families questions like, what did your child learn during this period? What are they most proud of? How did you motivate your child? How can I replicate all of those positive things you did in my classroom? So that's one thing, but schools will have to create an action plan to close that academic gap, but we have to make sure it's culturally responsive, it is developmentally appropriate, and it's implemented through a strength-based lens.
I love what you said there, because the teacher that we also interviewed for this, that Jordan interviewed, she said, you know, so often we're talking about like the negative impacts, right? That there's negative impacts from the pandemic when it comes to learning loss, but there are things that they did learn, that they gained, that they maybe traditionally wouldn't have in school as well. So you can focus on a little bit of the positive as well.
Absolutely, and we must.
I love that message. Dr. Allen, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Always great seeing you.
Thank you.